I'm 29, male, working as a project manager for a construction firm. I grew up in a small town, worked my way through college, and eventually landed a decent job that allowed me to live comfortably. I'm not flashy, but I've done well enough to afford a modest house, a decent car, and enough savings to not worry about emergencies. Life had been predictable until my fiancée, let's call her F, dropped a bombshell that turned everything upside down. We met 3 years ago at a mutual friend's wedding. F was stunning, outgoing, and charismatic, everything I wasn't. I'm the kind of guy who prefers staying home with a book or catching up on DIY projects. She was the life of the party, the one everyone gravitated toward. I couldn't believe someone like her wanted to be with me. At first, I chalked it up to luck, maybe a spark of chemistry, but as time went on, I let myself believe it was love. We got engaged about a year ago. I proposed after months of subtle nudges from her. Mentions of wedding venues, bridal magazines conveniently left open on the coffee table. I'll admit, I felt some pressure, but I wanted to make her happy. She seemed genuinely excited, throwing herself into planning the wedding. I was on board with most of it, though I cringed at the budget. F wanted something extravagant, the kind of event you see in glossy magazines, but I agreed because I thought it was what she deserved. But last weekend, everything unraveled. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I was in the garage working on a shelving unit. F said she was going out for lunch with her girlfriends, so I didn't think much of it. A couple of hours later, I went inside to grab some water and noticed she'd left her iPad on the kitchen counter. Normally, I wouldn't touch her stuff, but it pinged with a message notification, and curiosity got the better of me. The message was from her best friend, S. The preview read, "Can't believe you actually admitted it out loud." Oh, that struck me as odd. Admitted what? I opened the thread, and what I read made my stomach churn. F had confessed to her friends over lunch that she was only marrying me for my money. She called me boring but stable and said I was her ticket to the life she'd always dreamed of. The kicker? She admitted she didn't even love me. To her, I was just a safe bet, someone who'd foot the bill for her dream lifestyle. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the messages. Her friends were laughing about it, making jokes about how practical she was. One even said, if he's dumb enough to fall for it, that's on him. I felt like an idiot. All the little red flags I'd ignored over the years came rushing back. Her constant nagging about my spending habits, her obsession with social status, the way she always seemed more interested in what I could give her than in who I was. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I started planning. If she thought I was boring and predictable, she was about to get a wake-up call. The first thing I did was call off the wedding. I contacted the venue, the caterers, and everyone else involved and canceled all the arrangements. Then I went to my lawyer. I'd been smart enough to insist on a prenuptial agreement, something F had begrudgingly signed. The prenup stipulated that in the event of a breakup, she wouldn't be entitled to any of my assets. My lawyer assured me that the document was airtight. By the time F got home that evening, I had everything ready. She walked into the living room with her usual cheerful demeanor, but when she saw my expression, her smile faltered. "What's wrong?" she asked. "We need to talk," I said, keeping my voice calm. At first, she denied everything. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice trembling. But when I pulled up the screenshots of her messages with S, her face went pale. "That's not what it looks like," she stammered. "It was just a joke. We were joking around." I stared at her, waiting for her to realize how ridiculous she sounded. "So you're saying you didn't tell your friends you're only marrying me for my money? That you don't actually love me?" She didn't answer. Instead, she started crying, trying to guilt me into forgiving her. "I didn't mean it. You know how S is, she exaggerates everything. Please, let's just forget about this." But I wasn't buying it. "Forget about it? You admitted to using me, F. That's not something I can just brush off." The conversation escalated into a full-blown argument. She accused me of snooping, invading her privacy, and overreacting. When she realized I wasn't budging, she switched tactics, begging and pleading with me to give her another chance. But I was done. I told her to pack her things and leave. She didn't take it well. Over the next few days, she tried everything to change my mind. She showed up at my office, called my family, and even had us reach out to me to clear the air. When none of that worked, she turned nasty. She threatened to sue me for emotional distress, claiming I'd led her on. My lawyer shut that down quickly, reminding her of the prenup and the fact that I had evidence of her true intentions. But the final straw came when she showed up at my house with her brother, demanding I let her back in. They made a scene on my front lawn, yelling about how I'd ruined her life and humiliated her. I called the police, and they were escorted off the property. At this point, I'd had enough. I decided to take things a step further. I sent the screenshots of F's messages to her parents and close relatives, people she had always bragged about impressing. I wanted them to know exactly who she was and why the wedding was off. The fallout was spectacular. Her family was furious, not just because she'd embarrassed them, but because they'd already spent money on wedding-related expenses. F tried to save face by spinning the story, claiming I'd misunderstood her and blown things out of proportion. But the damage was done. Her social circle turned on her, and word spread quickly. People who once admired her for being classy started seeing her for who she really was, a manipulative gold digger. When all was said and done, I felt a mix of emotions: anger, relief, and a strange sense of satisfaction. I dodged a bullet, no doubt about it, but the experience left me jaded. Trusting someone again won't be easy, but I've learned my lesson. Love isn't about grand gestures or lavish weddings. It's about genuine connection and mutual respect. After F was escorted off my property, the dust started to settle, but the aftermath was anything but peaceful. F refused to accept the reality of the situation. For weeks, she tried to manipulate the narrative to save face and keep her entitled behavior under wraps. Her first move? Social media. F painted herself as the victim of a cruel and controlling fiancé. She posted cryptic updates about betrayal and heartbreak, conveniently leaving out the part where she admitted to using me. Her posts were filled with hashtags like #heartbroken and #starting-over. And for a while, some of her followers ate it up. Mutual friends reached out to me, confused and concerned. But as soon as I shared the screenshots, their tone changed. Most of them quietly distanced themselves from F. But she didn't stop there. One evening, about 2 weeks after the blowout, I got a letter from her lawyer. She was filing a claim for damages, alleging I had caused her emotional distress and financial harm by canceling the wedding. She claimed she had invested significant time and resources into the relationship and deserved compensation. It was laughable. My lawyer and I dissected the claim, and it was clear she didn't have a leg to stand on. The prenup explicitly stated she wasn't entitled to anything if the engagement ended. Plus, emotional distress? From her own lies? The audacity was almost impressive. We filed a counterclaim, demanding she reimburse me for some of the deposits I couldn't recover after canceling the wedding. It wasn't about the money. I didn't need it, but I wanted to send a message. Actions have consequences. Her lawyer backed down almost immediately. I suspect even they realized how flimsy her case was. F dropped the lawsuit, but she wasn't done trying to sabotage me. One day, I came home to find my car keyed and the word liar spray-painted on my garage door. I knew exactly who was behind it, but proving it was another matter. I filed a police report, installed security cameras, and started parking my car in the garage. The vandalism stopped after that, though I couldn't help but feel like I was being watched whenever I left the house. Then came the final stunt, her last-ditch attempt to ruin me. She managed to get a hold of my employer's contact information and emailed a letter to HR, claiming I was abusive and unfit for my job. The letter was full of exaggerations and outright lies, clearly designed to paint me in the worst possible light. Thankfully, my boss had known me for years and saw through the nonsense. He called me into his office, showed me the email, and asked if I wanted to press charges for defamation. I declined. At this point, I just wanted to move on. Despite everything, I couldn't shake the anger. Not just at her, but at myself for letting it get this far. How had I been so blind to her true nature? How had I ignored all the signs? I decided to channel that frustration into something productive. I sold the engagement ring, a custom piece I'd spent months designing, and used the money to take a solo trip to Iceland. It was the best decision I'd made in years. Standing under the northern lights, away from the chaos, I finally felt free. I realized that while F had wasted years of my life, she'd also taught me a valuable lesson about self-worth and boundaries. Back home, I focused on rebuilding. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected during my relationship with F, threw myself into work, and even started therapy to work through the lingering resentment. Slowly but surely, life started to feel normal again. As for F, last I heard, she'd moved to another city. Mutual acquaintances told me she was trying to reinvent herself, but her reputation had followed her. No one trusted her anymore, and she struggled to find someone willing to give her the lifestyle she'd been chasing. It was poetic justice, in a way. Looking back, I don't regret ending things the way I did. If anything, I wish I'd acted sooner. Relationships should be built on trust and mutual respect, not manipulation and entitlement. If you're ever in a situation where someone is taking advantage of your kindness or resources, don't ignore the red flags. Walk away before it's too late. And hey, if you enjoyed this story, hit subscribe. Stick around, I've got plenty more tales of dodge bullets and life lessons to share. Trust me, you won't want to miss them.